Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing Chapter 5 of The Technician's Fight. The cell block had to be uncomfortable for Kelsirians, Jeremy decided. While nowhere small, actually that would be one word, while nowhere small by his standard, the corridor leading to the cells was smaller than even the crawl space. You know what? I'm going to put that in quotes. The crawl space, single quotes to make the difference. The crawl space between the walls. The cells were divided into groups of 7, one to a cell, arranged in a circle so that the occupants would see each other. There was a strategy to who would be in the same group, Leah had told them, but it wasn't something she was involved in, so couldn't give him the details when he asked. The hunter escorted him to a group of cells with only one prisoner and left him there. The cells themselves were something else Jeremy expected would be uncomfortable to Kelsirians. On the small side, with a straight bench that doubled as a bed, the only concession to privacy for the toilet was a curtain, and he wondered how long a Kelsirian would hold it before degrading themselves to going behind one of them. The lack of lack of shower might be because cells weren't expected to be occupied for long enough to need them, or they had a system in place where prisoners were taken up to wash. The person he was here to see stretched on the bench, eyes closed. If she was asleep, this would be annoying. He doubted she'd take well to him waking her up. He wished he'd had a chair. A human design so he could flip it and rest his arms on the back, give himself what he thought would be some air of casualness. He softly cleared his throat, and she opened an eye, looked at him, and closed it, annoyed. Here to gloat. Why would you think I would do that? Why do you think I'd do that? Why else would you stand there all full of yourself looking down on me? No chair to sit in, and you're lying down. Short of sitting on the floor, this is the only position I can take. What do you want? She sighed. What do you want? For you not to end up in an incarceration center? She laughed. What the fuck do you care? What do you care? No. Why the fuck do you care? Honestly, I'd like to think I'm a decent person enough that when someone's heading for a death sentence, I try to talk them into taking the out they have, no matter how unpleasant that's going to be. It's prison. She motioned around them. It's not that bad. It's also not my first time. This is a cell. The incarceration centers are more like hard labor. The way it's been explained to me is that they drop you on a planet in the process of being terraformed, and you're left to survive while doing the work that machines can't do. She sat and searched his face. That doesn't sound legal. This isn't human space, and I know the psychologist told you Kelsirians aren't nice people. Incarceration centers are a representation of that. Yeah, well, it's not like I'm heading there anyway. There's a bunch of species I can petition for citizenship. She tapped the tablet. Just have to read up on which one I want to take me in. And you think one of them will? She smiled. I can be very charming when I want to be. Except that Leah had picked up on how strong her anti-establishment mindset was. Did anything you read tell you about mentalists? She frowned. Mind readers of a sort. Well, actual mind readers, if they're strong enough. There's going to be one when you go in front of the species representative you want to petition. It's not going to matter how charming you are. At the very least, the mentalists will pick up on your dishonesty. If they're strong enough, they're going to know how you plan on screwing them over and run off to form your own little group of criminal. That's bullshit. There's no way some oddie people like this Federation would allow that level of invasion of privacy. You'd be surprised the length they're willing to go to keep themselves in the places they control safe. As far as I know, they don't roam the halls listening to everything we think, but anyone can ask for one of them to be involved in any business transaction, which is what your petition will be, which is what your petition is. She stood and was slightly taller than he was. You know, for someone who started this by claiming not to want me to end up in one of those labor camps, you're sounding a lot like that's my only choice. It isn't. Reach out to your family. There's got to be at least one person who cares enough about you to intervene. Trust me, whatever you think will happen to you there can't be worse than what's waiting for you at an incarceration center. I've seen someone who survived it, a Kelsirian who survived it. There was barely anything of a person left. She had no idea how to function around other people. Or Glauer told him what she thought of his argument, so he tried the only other thing he couldn't think of. You don't have the sickness. You at least have that going for you. So you don't have to know so you have to know they aren't. Oh, the sickness, she said with derision. The way you love another man, an alien, and one at that. And yeah, I know what the sickness is code for among them. I've been out here long enough listening to that broadcast to work that out. And if you think having that is the only way you end up abused by the people in power, you are some fucking sort of entitled. He swallowed his rebuttal down. He'd been one of the top antimatter engineer. He had 3 reactor designs to his name. So, yes, he'd been in a comfortable position that meant he couldn't know what she'd experience. He didn't think it made his argument wrong, though. I don't want you to die. Is that what your game is? Rescue poor little me so they can tell stories? More stories about you? Fucking some sort of star of the Federation isn't enough for you? You want to outshine him? I've got news for you. I don't need any rescuer. I can get myself out of whatever trouble people dump on me. Been doing it since the moment my dad decided I wasn't good enough for him. Been doing enough for him. So you go back to your fuckrog and tell him he can fuck you until the universe burns out. For all I care, I'm not handing myself over to those assholes so they can lock me up with all those criminals. I'm going to die before I give up my freedom. He stared at her. Mention of Gralgiran being famous again eclipsed by her assertion she'd rather die than give up something she no longer had. She would die. He believed Leha when she told him that the humans were her only options to avoid an incarceration center. But what could he do if she didn't want to listen? It wasn't like they could dump her on a human ship and tell them to deal with it. Would they even be allowed to if there were human ships among Federation space? Among Federation species? Space. This should be space. Amongst Federation space? Look, we're a few months away. Yeah, that's singular. A few months away from a station. Use that time to think it over. If you pick one of them, don't try to screw them. They're going to know. Go home. That's your best chance to survive. She smirked. And your best chance is to let that animal use you like the toy you are. He left, taking his tablet out and writing one short message. I tried. A few seconds later, Leha's response came. Thank you for trying. Should this feel this comfortable? He asked the man walking around him, studying what Jeremy wore, the result of his work. When his trainer had told him he'd be getting combat armor, Jeremy had expected something printed, something more metal plates than fabric. He knew material science made it a lot possible, but what Kelsirians look bulky? What Kelsirians wore looked bulky, and he thought the ease they moved in, the ease which with which they moved in it was due to their higher strength, not because it was comfortable. How do you plan to fight if you can't move in what's protecting you? The hunter replied. Another surprise was the breadth of jobs hunters had beyond being hunters. Tech-related made sense to him. In the field, hunters needed to know how to fix stuff. But after meeting his tailor, he'd asked Thurrock, and nearly every hunter was either part of the crew or had jobs for when they weren't on a hunt, getting ready for one or resting from one. Hunters couldn't live off the hunt. The gods demanded they live. He stretched and the fabric moved. The plates were hard but didn't seem to have any weight to them. He hadn't had to be measured. The ship's scanners had given the man all the measurements he needed. Jeremy had been instructed where to go to try it, had been told to undress and given an undergarment to put on. That would take the place of the fur that protected hunters from the rough material of the armor. How does it feel? The trainer asked. Like I could wear this all the time. You can't. This is for combat training only. It will stay in your locker at the fight hall. When you exercise, it's on you not to get hurt. He chuckled. A weight machine is safe. There's barely any moving part. It's all gravity manipulation. Her expression said how little she was impressed. Don't worry, I'll leave this at the hall. Then I'll see you tomorrow, mid-third shift. Jeremy placed his food tray on the table, then dropped into the seat next to Thurrock and groaned. We need to move our group meal to sometime not after I've just trained. How did you ever survive being pounded into mush to become a trainer? He, Girani, and Atarikna chuckled. I have 3 sisters and brothers, Turek replied. Fighting is something we start doing quite young. And by that, you don't mean tussling in the dirt until one of you gives up, do you? How do Earther's children learn to fight? Zeniel asked. We Talahan are at each other's throat as soon as we are out of our mother's womb. In it, if she happens to carry more than one. It's why there's never been identicals among the Halans. Identicals? You mean twins? Only what Earthers call identical twins, Leha said. Identicals are extremely rare, a blessing of the gods, some believe. They're lucky enough to be born with their heart, Scarif said. No hunting needed. That's just story, Pertiros replied. My Kelsirian was an identical. She and her sisters were hearts. Weren't hearts. And wouldn't that cause problem if they had been? Jeremy asked and received curious stares. You know, the sex? Leah said. Being heart doesn't mean the relationship will be physical. It is usually part of it, but one does not force the other. The look the others exchanged said this was for his benefit, and he decided not to push. He didn't need any confirmation. Kelsirians were fine with sibling having sex. He was starting to wonder if there was anything sexual they considered wrong. Tell me, Jermic, Alex said. Since this is an informal setting, how did you find going on a hunt? Jeremy was surprised by the question. Alex had thawed over the weeks since the hunt, but since he'd never asked, Jeremy thought his friend didn't care to know. But as he said, this was informal, as Jeremy enforced when they hung out as a group, the first such gathering since they'd gone on the pirate ship. Hectic. Had to keep my head down most of the way to their engineering, got shoved out of the way a few times as a fight dropped on top of us. He chuckled once, literally, as 3 pirates were hiding in the open corridor ceiling. Once we made it to engineering, it was just about figuring out how to work around all the crazy modification they'd done to it so I could make sure it wouldn't blow up. Managed it with plenty of time to spare, too. Then got ambushed and knocked out. You did not hesitate, Alex said, his expression becoming guarded. Alex, can we not do this? I explained my reason already, and we're hanging out. No rank, no responsibilities to other, just me and a bunch of my friends. His friend looked around the table, his ears folded back. Yes, of course. My apologies. I didn't mean to disrupt the meal. It's simply that. He shook his head. As you said, this isn't the place. Jeremy left the table. Scarif, how's the workout coming along? I'm getting stronger, his friend announced. The machine increased the weight by 1 kilo. This will require research. This is based on a decision I made regarding how things are going to progress, in that Kelsirians are based off ambush predators. Because I don't want any of my species to be the best, I decided to go. They're built on strength and quick fighting. They don't have endurance the way humans do. And basically, that's where humans excel. Humans are adaptable and high endurance being. And I don't know how that would affect weight training. So I'm going to have to find somebody, maybe a trainer, and figure out how would somebody like somebody who genetically cannot gain endurance, how would that affect their strength building? Because Scarif is Kelsirians, and he doesn't like fighting. That is how Kelsirians exercise and fight. He doesn't like it because he's bad at it. And he's fallen in love with Jeremy's weight machine. But I need to figure out how his strength progression would work. I threw it like that just to have something there, because this is a first draft. I'm not going to worry about it. But before I do the second draft, I need to figure that out. That's good. When did it do it last? His friend's surprised expression was enough of an answer. Scarif had started training on it before Jeremy had been kidnapped, and in all that time had only increased how much he could lift by 1 kilo. Jeremy kept his thoughts silent. But there might be something to weightlifting not being a method Kelsirians got much out of. Jeremy returned with a piece of pie. How did you get a cook to make that? Xeniel demanded, looking disgusted. Use the printer. She used a fork to cut a piece off and eat it. Are you working on different flavors? It was the only time she used a utensil, and he understood pies were not made for claws. That much sweetness can't be healthy, Thrick said. Medical cleared me. She replied between bites. How long ago was that? Leah asked. Journey's expression darkened slightly. Are you poking into my head? I don't have to. You are only hiding your physical discomfort at the thought of your next medical. The thoughts themselves are loud. You should slow down, Jimmy said. Even with us, too much sweet isn't good. Medical complication from it can get expensive to treat. I'll be fine, she replied with a forced confidence of someone who knew what she did wasn't great, but wasn't willing to stop. It wasn't like he could force her to stop, since she had the recipe. How's training to be a beta coming along? He asked Turks, and chuckled. That good? Thurk glared at the hunter builder. It's been weeks of looking at recordings of fight in the field and training, and then writing reports on how the fight went, which fighters showed which weakness, and how I should go about teaching them to overcome it. It's been all reading and barely any actual fighting. I'm going to be a beta of hunters of the line. I should be honing my fighting. Someone didn't know what he was getting into, Etarikna said. I didn't ask to be trained for a rank of... to be trained to be a beta. Someone suggested I'd be a good fit for it. He looked at Jeremy. Don't look at me. I didn't even know that was a thing. Your heart is who told my beta to teach me. It might have something to do, Preteros said, with someone dropping everything to take part in rescuing Jeremy, not once, but twice. He's my friend. I wasn't going to let him be held by the Earthers. Initiative is a trait looked for in betas, Leah said, since it tends to lead to hunters who will run off to fight their own battles without the added responsibilities. Are you saying being made a beta is punishment? Jeremy asked, trying not to laugh. No, it is an honor. Doesn't feel like one right now, Thor grumbled. Just think of when you have a pack of your own, Troy said. Young hunters filled with lust for battle, just clawing for an excuse to throw themselves at our enemies, and you having to explain to your alpha how that happened. Thor groaned, and she was pleased. Excuse me, Jeremy said, standing and avoiding looking at the eatery's entrance. He didn't want to tip off his stalker. He didn't want to tip his stalker. He'd noticed him. He was getting tired of this. He did his best to keep people between him and the entrance, which meant he only had the occasional view of it and the grey, white, and brown Kelsirian there, who'd been glaring in his direction. Then, between sight, he was gone. When he reached it, there was no sign of Gralgiran's friend among either side of the hallway. Quietly cursing, he returned to his friends. Tonight, he was telling his heart to do something about that guy. And that concludes Chapter 5 of The Technician's Fight. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is up on Ream Story. And if you are looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.